Hey, what's up YouTube? Walt's How-Tos and Reviews. Today I wanted to explain why I think the best new iPhone is actually the 12 mini. Now I also have the 12 Pro Max, which I know a lot of people are going to argue that is the best new iPhone. And when I actually compare the mini to the 12 Pro Max and I list out on paper the pros and the cons, I can't think of that many pros and I can think of a lot of cons. So why on earth would I think the 12 mini is better than the 12 Pro Max? Well, naturally, I must be putting a lot more weight or value on the pros than I am the cons. And I could see where most people might not put as much value on the pros as I do, but I would argue that most of the population, like over 90%, when you really dissect all the cons, won't put that much weight on them, won't even care, and probably won't even notice. So let me just get to like the main point or reason why I like the mini more than the 12 Pro Max. Comfort. It's that simple. Maybe it's more true for men than women, and the reason I say that is I realize like women can put their phone in their purse, but guys are always carrying this around in their pocket, and the 12 Pro Max is pretty heavy and it's pretty big, especially relative to the mini. Sometimes you even forget that it's in your pocket. Now I actually realized this a while ago. As you can see, I'm an avid iPhone user and I've had a lot of different models and different sizes. And I remember when I had the iPhone 5, I really liked how small it was and the way it felt in my hand and in my pocket. And I went from that to the 6 Plus, which was a gigantic change. And with the 6 Plus, it was unique because it was a lot thinner and it had rounded edges, so it actually didn't feel that bad in your pocket. But there's something else at play here. Originally, I thought it was mainly based on the size of your hand. If you had a bigger hand, you'd want a bigger phone. But after a further investigation, I realized there was more to it. You can do this simple experiment right now to see if a bigger or smaller phone might be more comfortable in your hand. The most important part of this experiment is making sure you don't bend your fingers. Keep them in line and perfectly straight. Then take your thumb and see if you can touch the tip of your middle finger or even go past it like the hand on the right. My hand is on the left and you can see I struggle to get towards the tip without bending my fingers. Now, unless you have really large hands or a really long thumb, if your hand is like mine to where it's just not flexible, I guess, or for whatever reason I can't get my thumb very far without bending my fingers, I would imagine you're going to have the similar situation that I do, to where when I'm holding a large phone, as you can see here, I have to curl my fingers in to be able to reach over to the far left side of the phone, which makes me lose grip and it's just really uncomfortable for my hand. To get to the bottom left corner, like that number button, I literally have to use two hands or I'll drop the phone. So let me know in the comments, I'm really curious, are you able to keep your fingers straight and touch the end of your middle finger? And if you can't, can you actually reach the W, the A, and the Z holding a big phone with one hand? I have to shift my hand, it's uncomfortable, and for me, one of the biggest things is I don't want to have to use two hands to use my phone. I want to be able to use my phone with one hand. Maybe you don't care, maybe it's not that important to most people, but for me, that's the biggest reason why I wanted the mini over the 12 Pro Max. Now, when cell phones were new, this was actually in my favor because I felt like they started out really big and then it was all about making them smaller and smaller and smaller. And then we finally reached a point where all of a sudden bigger became better. And what was unfortunate about that is when I was looking for the newest, latest, and greatest iPhone, I was always worried that if I got the smaller iPhone, I was sacrificing performance or some kind of feature that I do want. And like most people, I want it all, right? I want a flagship phone, all the features, the latest and greatest, but I want it in a small form factor. And I realize that's hard to do these days because there's so many things and to pack it all into a small package isn't easy. But I was really excited to see Apple was trying, and then I was actually thinking, what am I actually going to be giving up by not going with the 12 Pro Max and going with the mini? Let me just dissect them and look at each one. So let's walk through these cons. First and foremost, this in my opinion is the biggest con, and that's battery life. The bigger phone, the battery is going to last longer, there's no way around it. But here's how I made my decision. Currently, my latest phone was the iPhone XS, and when I compared the two on Apple's website, they look pretty much the same. And right now, on a 2-year-old phone, the battery's fine for me. It could be better, but it gets me through the whole day. I can charge it at night. A lot of times if I forget to charge it, I actually have one of those fast chargers now. It's really not a big deal for me. The battery isn't that bad on my phone. It doesn't bother me that much, and I'm imagining a phone with a similar battery life, but it's actually brand new instead of 2 years old. If anything, should feel like an upgrade. Alright, can cross that off the list, not that bad. Another big thing that bummed me out, I don't feel like will be that big of a thing for most people, is the 512 gigabyte space. You can't get that on the Mini. I don't know if it's just physically impossible to put it in such a small form factor, but Apple, I am willing to give you my money. I would have paid extra for it if you had that feature there, but it's just not there. But for me, it really wasn't that big of a con, that big of a difference. My last phone was 256 gigabytes. Because now that I make videos, I would have actually gone with the bigger one, but that's the only reason why, and I don't think most people out there are making videos all the time to post on YouTube, which takes a lot of space. Alright, so obviously it's a smaller phone. It means it's got a smaller screen and also smaller speakers. I compared the two side by side. The iPhone 12 Pro Max, it's a little bit louder, but the smaller one's loud enough. It's not a big deal. Again, for me, the difference really didn't matter at all. I don't care to have really loud speakers on my phone. If I want something to be loud, I'm just gonna connect it to a Bluetooth speaker. And then really it's about what your use case is for your phone. What I use my phone for and what I prioritize it for most is work. That's just me. And when I'm looking at the screen size, I care about that with like media consumption, like Facebook, YouTube, that sort of thing. And to be honest, I kind of like that there's almost a disincentive to use it for media consumption when I should be working. And I am spoiled. I do have the latest iPad Pro, and I went with the bigger 12-inch versus the 11-inch because I use that primarily for media consumption. When I'm in bed at night, I'm watching a big TV with a big screen, or I'm on my iPad watching YouTubes and Facebook and all that stuff. I'd much rather have a smaller form factor than a bigger screen for my phone, at least. You know, when it comes to a TV, yeah, bigger's better in my opinion. Another con is apparently the MagSafe charging is a little bit slower on the Mini than it is on the rest of the models. I think it's 3 watts less. It's 12 instead of 15. And from what I read and what most people say, really not that big of a deal. I haven't got my MagSafe charger yet, so I haven't tested it out between the two, but I'm not that worried about the battery life. And if I'm in a situation where I need really quick charging, like I'm at an airport, my phone's gonna die or something, probably just plug it in rather than do wireless. But that little minuscule thing, again, it's like, I don't really care. It's not that big of a con for me. Not much weight or value there. So the second biggest con for me was actually the colors. I really like the colors on the 12 Pro Max more than the color choices you have on the Mini. Now that's obviously an opinion, not a fact. You might even think the complete opposite. But you know, here's the blue for the Mini. I think that Pacific blue for the 12 Pro Max is a better blue if you're gonna go blue. That's just my opinion. All right, so let's get the elephant out of the room. The biggest con is the differences in camera. You get 2 cameras on the Mini, you get 3 on the Pro Max. And on the Pro Max, there's a bigger sensor. It's the best iPhone camera system you can buy to date. And I'm the kind of guy who obviously makes videos, who's gonna take advantage of that. Again, I'm spoiled. The 12 Pro Max that I bought is for my wife. So if I wanna use it, I can just pull out her SIM card, put in another iPhone, have her go to work with that, and I can make a video with it. And it is really good and awesome. But when I actually compared the two, I was like, man, the software in Apple is amazing. It's pretty darn good with just the 12. And just to put it into perspective, what my wife was most excited for with her new phone was that it was the best camera. You know, she loves taking pictures of the kids, that sort of thing. It's the best camera, they're gonna look better on that. And I was trying to explain to her, I personally don't think you have a trained enough eye. I mean, I don't even have a trained enough eye to really be able to tell the difference between the two. It's Apple's software that makes the photos look so good. So I did a little test. I took 3 different pictures, one on the Mini, one on the 12 Pro Max, and one on her old phone, which was the 10S Max. And I asked her which one did she like better. And what was ironic and funny was she picked the Mini first, then she picked her old phone, and last but not least, she picked the 12 Pro Max. But not to concern you, it wasn't like one was drastically better than the other. In a way, I think she was just kind of guessing like, I think this looks like it was on the new phone. It looks a little bit better. I'm not sure why. And it was probably because the software on the old phone just exposed it or color graded a little bit different, and that specific lighting and stuff looked a little bit better. It was pictures of her. I told her I wouldn't put it on YouTube because she asked me not to, so unfortunately I can't show you those exact ones. But let me just show you the difference between the Mini and the 12 Pro Max. I had the Max in the right hand, Mini in the left hand, took a screen recording, just took a regular photo. Now they're both, in this case, using the same lens, which is the wide 1.6 aperture, and you can see very similar. When you use the ultra wide, very similar. Now the third lens the Max has that the Mini doesn't is a 2.5 zoomed in telephoto 2.2 aperture. So you can see this photo on the right here, I can't take that with the Mini and it's very zoomed in. However, when I do a portrait mode with the normal wide angle lens that both of them have, I think it looks the exact same. Now there are advantages of the Max and the software using all three cameras to make better photos, but most people just browsing photos on the internet, I don't think are going to be able to tell the difference. Alright, so another con is you don't have LiDAR on the Mini. What do you use LiDAR for? Right now, I mean, there's really not much. Maybe it helps focus, but I mean, the Mini's focusing just fine. It looks the same in my opinion. I have LiDAR on my iPad. The only thing I could think of, which I was trying to use my iPad for, is like taking measurements. I work in construction, was trying to make like blueprints, and there are some apps that do that. They're just not there yet though, and it really didn't help that much. It was a little bit better, but it's like extremely specific use case. I'm sure in the future there'll be uses for it, but right now I don't really care if it has LiDAR or not. Alright, so here's another con. You can shoot 60 frames per second on both the Mini and the Max, but on the Max you can do it with Dolby Vision. Are you asking what is Dolby Vision? Exactly. You don't even know, so you don't even realize that it is a con. And if you do know what it is and it is a big deal for you, then maybe you want to consider it, but not a big deal for me. Alright, and then the last con, which kind of goes to that same thing, is in the future you're going to be able to use Apple's new Pro RAW format for your photos. Same thing as last time. Probably don't even know what that is. Do you shoot photos in RAW? You might even be wondering like, what is RAW? I thought a photo was a photo, which is totally understandable. But now let's actually go over the pros. This is a flagship phone. It has Apple's newest, latest and greatest, most powerful chip for a phone in it. And it works amazing. It is lightning fast. You know, depending on which benchmark and how you value things, Apple's always kind of been the best in terms of performance. You know, Android and others always have more features. You can do more. Like, they're always going to come out with it first, and then Apple's going to do it way later, but they're going to do it right kind of deal. Similar to like folding phones. Apple doesn't have a folding phone. Samsung has more than one now. Apple eventually will, but Samsung always does it first in a way. But when it comes to like performance, Apple always wins, at least on the bench scores that I see. So I don't think anyone will really argue. It has the highest performance to size ratio of any other phone. And the way I look at it is like, wouldn't that be harder? Wouldn't it be hard to pack so much in such a small form factor? I would have thought it would have been more expensive, and it's cheaper. That's a huge pro. And that's just like a really cool factor to me, that you can have so much performance, a flagship phone in such a small size. Just as like science and technology progresses, I just think that's amazing. It's like no one would be that impressed if you have some huge warehouse. It's a giant supercomputer that can do some crazy complications. But if you could do that on a desktop, it's like, man, such a small factor. Like, I just think that's cool. Like a quick little tangent. People spend 6 figures on these watches with these name brands on it. And when you ask them why is it so expensive, it's because it's so complex. The movement is so complicated. And it's just like, do you really think that that is a higher accomplishment of how complex and sophisticated we can make things than this? You know, when you really think about it, wait, there's a little chip and there's how many transistors and how small, and it can do all that. It's magic. It's unbelievable. Alright, so I'm going to end the video with a couple predictions. Originally, cell phones came out, they're these huge blocky things, and the trend or race was who can make them smaller and smaller but still be as good as the last phone. And then eventually we came to a point where bigger became better. Maybe it was because Apple created that whole touchscreen thing, and then since there's no buttons in its screen, you know, it became cool to have a bigger screen, which I would assume manufacturers like because it's easier to put more performance and more space. Where it gets tricky is shrinking it. But here's my 2 predictions. One is we are on the cusp of going back to that original trend where smaller is better. And foldable phones are going to really lead that race. You can still have a big screen, but it folds up into a small package. And as usual, Apple will be the last one to do it. But when they do it, they'll do it really well. And you can see Samsung and some others are already starting to do this. Another thing I was thinking about is I kind of feel like Apple's taking a little bit of a survey. You know, they're like, we're going to make 4 iPhones this time, and we're going to offer them in 3 different sizes, and we're just going to see what the market says. Like, what do people actually want and want to buy? Maybe it was because their SE, which was a smaller form factor, was really popular, and they're like, was it because it was cost effective, or because people wanted a small phone? Let's make a flagship small phone and see what the data says. What I predict is the sales for the iPhone mini will be more than what people think. Meaning, you know, Apple or some technology company is going to say, hey, here's 4 phones, you know, 40% is going to go to this one, 30% to this one, and then 15% to this one, 15% to this one. Just made that up. Some might add up to 100. Whatever they think the iPhone mini is going to sell, I bet it outperforms that number. So if you want an opinion from somebody that's used both the mini and the 12 Pro Max, my opinion is I like the mini a little bit more.